How much poison is in our food? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Sam Ellman. I'm a sustainability chemist with specialties in biodegradable materials and environmental toxicology. And today I'll be taking a question from Reddit user Angry BPD Girl who asks, I was checking out plasticlist.org and noticed milk bottled in glass had higher counts of some chemicals than milk bottled in plastic. And I was confused why this was. Can you explain like I'm 5 to me? And she says here that she wants to know about the Strauss organic milk in glass. This is a really interesting question. Also, I had never heard of plasticlist.org before being asked this, and it's a great resource for everyone. So let's do some detective work. Okay, let's head to plasticlist.org. This is a really cool website that's compiled by some great researchers. So you can see here on the left, we have the names of a bunch of different food items. And on the right, we have the amount of various amounts of chemicals that are in these foods. So all of these chemicals are varying degrees of toxic, and clearly the test for a whole lot of them, which is great. The gray cells represent chemicals where they can't be detected in that food item. So for example, in this distilled water that's up top, none of these chemicals can be detected in the food. These numbers just represent the minimum that they would be able to detect if it was there. The yellow represents times when they were able to detect the chemicals and how much of that chemical is in there. Darker yellow means more chemical is present, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's in a dangerous level, as we'll get to in a minute. Alright, we'll type in milk and see what we get. As I mentioned, these researchers were very thorough, so the first few results are all for breast milk, but that's not what we're looking for. So we'll scroll down until we see Clover Organic Whole Milk in Whole Gallon Jug. That's in a plastic jug, so that can be our stand-in for milk in plastic. And then a few lines down, we see the Strauss Organic Whole Milk in Glass, which is the type of milk that our asker was asking about. So we'll compare these to get an idea for what the differences are. Alright, so let's scroll over to the yellow and see what we're working with. So in this case, we have 18,000 counts of this chemical in the plastic bottle and 28,000 counts in the glass bottle. So in this case, there's more in the glass than in the plastic, just like our questioner asked about. And one of the cool features of this website is you can click on the chemical name up top and get some information about it. So for example, this chemical, DMP, is used as an insect repellent for the cows. It keeps away mosquitoes and ticks, that kind of thing. And that already tells us something about why there might be more in the glass bottle than in the plastic, and it has nothing to do with the bottle. It has everything to do with how the different farms that make the different milks use their insect repellent. Maybe one farm uses more insect repellent than the other, or maybe one farm does a better job of washing off their cows before milking them than the other. That isn't affected by the bottle that the milk is in, it's just a matter of how those repellents are used in either case. Okay, let's keep scrolling and look for some other chemicals. So here in the DEHT column, we've got another example, where there's 18,000 counts in the plastic jug and 28,000 counts in the glass jug. So let's find out more about this chemical to try and figure out why there's more in the glass. This chemical, DEHT, is a plasticizer. Now, why would there be a plasticizer in a glass jug? Let's talk about it. In scientific terms, the word plastic just means flexible. In fact, the scientists who invented plastic were so impressed by how flexible it is, that's how plastic got its name. The chemical DEHT we were talking about is something called a plasticizer. Now, a plasticizer is just something you add to a material to make it more plastic, more flexible. There are plasticizers for both natural and synthetic materials. Like for example, water is a natural plasticizer for wood, and you probably already knew this, because wet wood is a lot more flexible than dry wood. There are many different kinds of plastic. Some plastics are inherently very flexible, like the plastic used for grocery bags, and some plastics are a lot stiffer and tougher, like the plastic used for car bumpers. Usually, plasticizers aren't used on inherently flexible plastics, because why would you use a flexible maker on something that's already flexible? Usually, plasticizers are used to make tough, hard plastics more flexible for sturdy but bendy applications. This is a milking machine, and I'm going to bet this is where the plasticizers are coming from. Because the milking machine needs to be sturdy in order to put up with heavy-duty farm use, but the suckers and the tubes need to be flexible in order to do their job. This is a classic case of where you would use a sturdy plastic with plasticizers to get the ideal material for the application. Depending on what the tubes in the milking machine are made of and how old they are, they can leach different amounts of plasticizers. And I'm going to bet that's why there's more in the glass bottle milk than in the plastic bottle. I don't think it has anything to do with the packaging. I think it has everything to do with what milking machines were used to milk the cows in each case. And in this case, it happened to be that it's higher in the glass bottle than the plastic, but I think it could have just as easily gone the other way. So now we have an idea of where the chemicals are coming from, but are the chemicals dangerous? It'll take a little math to find out, but don't worry, it's easy math. Alright, let's scroll over and go to our biggest, scariest number to use as an example. In this case of the glass milk bottle, we see the 66,000 counts under this chemical DIDP. So we'll click on the chemical, and we'll see that there's a limit set by the EU, and the EU is very strict about these kinds of chemical limits, which is great. And the limit is 150,000 counts per kilogram of body weight per day. So that means you would have to be taking in this amount of the chemical in order to get sick. But we have to calculate it for the kilograms of body weight. So we'll do that with me as an example. I weigh 185 pounds, so we'll put in 185 pounds for our American viewers. And then to turn that into kilograms, we divide it by 2.2. So I weigh 84 kilograms. Then the next thing we do is we multiply that 84 kilograms by the daily amount we're able to have before we get sick. So it's 150,000. 150,000. And then we've got that number. Big scary number. Then we have to divide that by the number in the milk to find out how many servings of the milk it would take for me to get sick. So we'll divide that number by 66,480. And we find that for me to get sick from drinking this milk, I would need to drink 189 glasses of milk. Now, chemicals are a very serious issue, and chemical poisoning is extremely important. But I bet that if I were to drink 189 glasses of milk in a day, then the chemicals would not be what's making me sick. It would be the fact that I just drank 189 glasses of milk in a day. That would make anyone sick. If you want to do this kind of toxicology calculation at home, here are the formulas. Don't worry, they're a lot easier than they look. So for American viewers, to get your weight in kilograms, you take your weight in pounds and divide by 2.2. And of course, for people outside the US, you probably already know what you weigh in kilograms. To find the number of daily servings it would take for you to get sick from eating something, you take your weight in kilograms, you multiply that by the daily exposure limit that we get from clicking on the chemical name, and then you divide that by the chemicals per serving. That's exactly what we were doing just now for the milk example, and I'll do another example so you can see again. According to plasticlist.org, one of the worst offenders for chemical exposure is Burger King, so we'll look at that for an example. Let's pop in Burger King. And here we see the King Whopper with cheese has a whopping 5.8 million counts of DEHT in it. So let's do the math on whether or not that's something we need to worry about. So we'll start again by dividing my weight, 185 pounds, by 2.2 to get my weight in kilograms. Then we'll go over to our DEHT to see the minimum amount that we would need to take in every day to start feeling sick. And the number here is 1 million per kilogram of body weight per day. So then we'll take that, our 84 kilograms of body weight, and multiply that by 1 million. And then we divide that by the amount that's in a Whopper, 5.8 million. So 5,877,600. And this says we would have to eat 14 Whoppers in a day for us to start getting sick from the chemicals in that Whopper. So that begs the question that if I were to try and challenge myself to eat 14 Whoppers in a day, what would make me start feeling sick first? The chemicals that are in those Whoppers, or more likely, the very greasy food that I'm eating? And again, in order for this to be a problem from chemical exposure, you would need to be eating 14 Whoppers a day every single day. Which, again, the bigger problem in that case is not the chemicals, it's the massive amount of greasy food you're eating. It's extremely important to be vigilant about toxins in our food and environment. We want every number on that website to be as close to zero as we can possibly get it. At the same time, though, we need to give our bodies some credit. The human liver and kidneys are some of the most amazing systems in all of nature, and they're detoxing our bodies every minute of every day. We want to keep toxicity low so we don't overtax those amazing organs, But if the toxins don't get all the way to zero, we'll be okay. I think the most important work I can do is to put the chemical hazards in our world into a context that anyone can understand. Are there toxins affecting our health in our food and environment? Absolutely, and we need to do everything we can to remove them as much as possible. Unhealthy food and stress also negatively impact our health, though, so I think it's important to keep each of these hazards in their proper context and treat them appropriately. If I ate 14 Whoppers every day, I would get sick from the fat and sugar long before I got sick from the chemical exposure. And likewise, if I spent every night losing hours of sleep worried about toxins in my environment, then any benefits I might gain by reducing the toxins I intake would be offset by all the sleep I'm losing. The best advice for your health is also the most boring. Reduce toxins where you can. Eat a healthy, balanced diet. Don't eat too much. Try to move at least a little every day. Get plenty of sleep. If you don't feel well, go to the doctor, and try not to worry too much. If you'd like to see more of this, I post scripts for all of my videos a few months ahead of time on my free blog. The link is in the description. If you found this helpful, I'd like to mention that it's a hard time to be a scientist in the US, and I'm currently unemployed. So if you can send me a few bucks directly through the Venmo link right here, I'd really appreciate it. Remember, science only exists thanks to the collective labor of generations of human history. So the fruits of that labor belong to all of us. Science isn't just for scientists. Science is for everyone, which means science is for you.